Marcus Hayes's calloused hands locked together over her sternum, pushing down hard. 30 compressions, 2 inches deep. The rhythm burned into muscle memory from a free CPR class at the community center 5 years back, when Maya had asked him point blank if he knew how to save people. The woman's designer suit wrinkled beneath his weight, navy fabric creasing against polished elevator marble. Her skin had gone cold under his palms, lips shifting from pink to a blue that made his stomach clench. He tilted her chin back with practiced care, pinched her nose between thumb and forefinger, and pressed his mouth against hers. 1 breath, 2 breaths, back to compressions. The mechanics were simple. The stakes were everything. His shoulders screamed with exhaustion, sweat dripping from his jaw onto her motionless face. But stopping meant watching her die, and that wasn't something his conscience would survive. The tower stood silent and around them at 2:17 in the morning, 40 floors above a sleeping city. Marcus preferred the night shift for exactly this reason. No executives brushing past him like furniture. No pointed questions about why the trash bins weren't emptied fast enough. No reminders that his daughter wore duct-taped sneakers while theirs collected in closets. Just him and the methodical satisfaction of restoring order to chaos, making dirty things clean again. 23, 24, 25. His voice echoed off elevator walls as he counted aloud, each number a prayer he didn't know how to properly form. At compression 28, doubt crept in cold and certain. What if the technique had changed since that class? What if he was pressing too hard, or not hard enough, or had already broken ribs that were now puncturing vital organs? But he kept going because the alternative was unthinkable. After the 3rd round, her body jerked beneath his hands. The gasp that tore from her throat was wet and desperate, and the most beautiful sound he'd ever heard outside of Maya's first cry. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused, then sharpening with each blink until they locked onto his face with an intensity that made him want to look away. They stared at each other in that suspended moment, him kneeling over her in his maintenance uniform, chest heaving, her sprawled against cold floor tiles with one shoe missing, and briefcase contents scattered like accusations. Then her gaze dropped to his name tag, lingering on the words printed there. Marcus Hayes, custodial supervisor. Something flickered across her features that wasn't gratitude, something more complicated that made him feel exposed in a way he couldn't name. Footsteps pounded down the hallway. Paramedics arrived with efficient professionalism, easing Marcus aside with gentle hands and clipped instructions. He stood back, suddenly aware of how he looked, uniform damp with exertion, hands trembling from adrenaline crash. Just another custodian in someone else's emergency. She didn't look at him again as they lifted her onto the stretcher, already retreating into that other world of $1,000 suits and market-moving decisions he could only observe from a distance. Marcus picked up her scattered papers with the same care he brought to every task. One document caught his attention, letterhead embossed in gold. Elena Blackwood, Chief Executive Officer, Blackwood Industries. He'd cleaned her corner office before during his rounds, wiping down the massive desk and floor-to-ceiling windows, but never seen her in person. She'd been just another name on a door, existing in a stratosphere he couldn't reach even if he wanted to. The coffee cup lay on its side near where she'd collapsed, white porcelain with the company logo in black. Marcus bent to retrieve it, brought it close by instinct. No coffee smell, instead something chemical and wrong that made his sinuses itch. He glanced around the empty elevator lobby, then pulled a plastic evidence bag from his cleaning cart. He kept them for broken glass and sharp objects, and sealed the cup inside. He didn't understand why he was keeping it, only that something about this whole situation felt off in a way his gut couldn't ignore. The rest of his shift passed in a mechanical blur of trash collection and floor buffing. His mind kept returning to that moment when her eyes found his name tag, the strange expression that had crossed her face. Not relief or thankfulness, but something closer to embarrassment. Like being saved by the help was worse than dying alone. 7 o'clock found him at Rebecca's apartment across town, climbing 3 flights because the elevator had been broken for 2 months. His sister opened the door before he could knock, dark circles under her eyes from the night shift at County General. She took one look at his face and knew something had shifted. Maya appeared behind her aunt's hip, still in pajamas decorated with whales and octopi, Her hair stood up in tangled waves that would take 20 minutes to comb smooth. At 11 years old, she was all sharp elbows and questions, growing so fast he had to buy new jeans every 3 months. Her nose wrinkled as she moved closer. "Daddy, you smell like hospital soap." Rebecca's eyes narrowed with professional assessment. "You look shaken. What happened?" Marcus deflected by moving toward the kitchen, needing his hands busy. Breakfast meant scrambled eggs and toast, the reliable constants of morning routine. Maya's backpack hung on its hook by the door, patches of silver duct tape holding torn seams together. He saw it fresh every morning, and it cut him clean through every single time. The refrigerator was a collage of Maya's drawings, elaborate ocean scenes with labeled species, careful diagrams of deep-sea pressure systems, a family portrait that showed just the two of them standing under an oversized moon. Past due bills hid behind the artwork, utility notices, and credit card statements he'd deal with on payday. Maybe. Maya climbed onto a stool at the kitchen counter, watching him crack eggs into the pan with the focused attention she brought to everything. "Ashley said her mom said our family is poor. Is that true?" The egg in Marcus's hand nearly slipped. He set down the carton with deliberate care, then knelt so they were eye to eye. This conversation had been coming since she had started middle school 2 months ago, surrounded by kids whose parents drove new cars and took ski vacations. "We have everything we need, a home, food, each other. That's what being rich really means." Maya's expression showed she was trying to believe him, wanted to believe him, but 11 was old enough to understand that the world measured value in dollars and cents. She'd figured out that some jobs mattered more than others, that some people mattered more than others, and where her father fell on that scale. Rebecca appeared in the doorway, arms crossed over her scrubs. "Marcus, what really happened tonight?" But he couldn't find words for it yet. The weight of lips gone cold, the terror that his hands wouldn't remember what to do, the way Elena Blackwood had looked at his name tag like it explained something unsatisfactory. So he finished making breakfast while Maya chattered about the marine biology project due next week, needing poster board and colored markers they couldn't quite afford. 3 days later, his supervisor, Dan, intercepted him at the start of shift. The man was 62, with a bad knee and zero patience for workplace drama, which made the cream-colored envelope he held seem particularly ominous. The paper was expensive, thick stock with elegant calligraphy that didn't belong in a maintenance supervisor's hand. "This came for you through executive channels." Dan's skepticism was written clear in the lines around his mouth. "From the top floor." Marcus opened it slowly, aware of Dan watching his every reaction. The message was brief and formal. "Mr. Hayes, I would like to thank you personally for your assistance. Please meet me at my office tomorrow at 3 p.m. Executive elevator code 8147, Elena Blackwood. Don't get ideas." Dan's warning came quick and certain. "She's being polite because that's what rich people do when the help saves their life. You go up, say you're welcome, come back down. That's it." Marcus nodded, but his mind was already calculating. 3 p.m. meant leaving at 2, which meant losing 4 hours of wages because the night shift didn't offer flexibility. 4 hours was groceries for a week, or the gas bill, or half of Maya's field trip deposit that was due next Friday. But refusing felt impossible for reasons he couldn't articulate. The next afternoon, he stood in the executive elevator for the first time in 12 years of working at Riverside Tower. The brass fixtures gleamed with the kind of polish that required someone's full attention, probably earning minimum wage to make rich people's reflections perfect. The code 8147 opened access to the top 5 floors, where Marcus only went after hours, when the powerful people had gone home to their powerful lives. Elena Blackwood's office took up the entire northwest corner of the 40th floor. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, the city sprawling below like a detailed model where real people became abstract dots. She stood silhouetted against that view, backlit so her features were initially hard to read. When she turned, power radiated from her in controlled waves, charcoal suit perfectly tailored, heels adding 3 inches to her height, dark hair cut in a sharp bob that probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. But her hands trembled slightly when she extended one toward him. "Thank you for coming. I wanted to thank you properly." Marcus shook her hand, noting the firm grip, the calluses that suggested she wasn't entirely unfamiliar with hard work despite the manicured nails. Just Marcus is fine. You don't need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same. Something flickered in her expression, but they didn't. Security footage shows 7 people passed the malfunctioning elevator before you arrived. They kept walking. The words landed heavy in the expensive silence of her office. Marcus didn't know what to do with them, how to reconcile people walking past someone dying with the world he thought he understood. Elena moved to her desk, picked up an envelope that matched the one from yesterday. I've arranged a reward, $50,000. It seems insufficient for saving someone's life, but it's something. The number echoed in Marcus's skull. $50,000, Maya's college fund in one check. The transmission repair his car desperately needed. The dental work Rebecca couldn't afford. Every past due notice tucked behind refrigerator drawings, erased. His jaw tightened anyway. I don't want your money. Elena looked genuinely surprised, like he'd spoken a foreign language she didn't have translation software for. Everyone wants money. What do you want? I just want to know you're okay, that's all. The simplicity seemed to unsettle her more than anything else could have. She studied him with new attention, seeing past the maintenance uniform for the first time. Her gaze lingered on his face, the gray at his temples, the lines that came from raising a daughter alone while working nights for 12 years straight. Why did you help me? The question came quieter than before. The footage shows those 7 people. Why were you different? Marcus thought about that free CPR class taken on a Tuesday afternoon during the hour between dropping Maya at school and trying to sleep before night shift. He'd gone because Maya asked if he could save people, and he'd wanted the answer to be yes. Because it was the right thing to do. Any person with basic human decency would have tried. Elena moved to the window, her posture losing some of its corporate armor. My doctors say cardiac episodes stress-induced. They want me to slow down, make lifestyle changes. She laughed without humor. I built this company from nothing. Slowing down isn't something I know how to do. I don't know how to be anything except this. Marcus understood better than she realized. Maya asked him sometimes why they couldn't vacation like her friends, why their apartment only had 1 bathroom, why Daddy always looked tired. He'd built a life for his daughter from nothing too, just without the corner office and city views. Maybe that's the problem. When you forget why you started, the work becomes the prison instead of the purpose. Elena turned back to him, really looking now. She wasn't seeing his uniform anymore, wasn't categorizing him into the box labeled service worker. She was trying to figure out who he was beneath the label society had slapped on him. That night in the elevator, she paused, something shifting in her expression. When I regained consciousness and saw your name tag, do you know what my first thought was? Marcus stayed silent, sensing confession. Not, thank God I'm alive. It was embarrassment. I was embarrassed that a custodian had seen me vulnerable, had touched me, had breathed into my mouth. Her voice dropped. I'm ashamed of that thought, but I'm trying to be honest. The admission hit Marcus in the chest. At least she was aware of it, which was more than most people managed. He'd spent 47 years being invisible to people like her, existing only when toilets needed fixing or spills needed cleaning. At least you recognize it. Most people don't even notice they think that way. Elena's face showed real discomfort now. I want to be better than that. My father owned a small manufacturing plant. When he got sick, a larger corporation bought him out for pennies and shut it down. 40 families lost their income. My father lost his purpose. He died 3 months later. She moved to her desk, fingers tracing the wood grain. I started Blackwood Industries to prove you could build something big without destroying everything small. But somewhere along the way, I became exactly what I hated. I stopped seeing the people who make this company run. The parallel between them became clear in that moment, both trying to honor dead parents, both building something from nothing, both terrified of becoming the thing they'd sworn to fight. Just different circumstances, different resources, same human struggle underneath. My daughter asked me why we can't go on vacation like her friend's family. She said, but Daddy, you clean floors. Can't someone else? She's 11 years old and already learning that some jobs matter more than others. Some people mattered more than others. Elena sat down on the edge of her desk in a gesture that seemed uncharacteristically informal. You don't act like someone who's been told he doesn't matter. Marcus thought about Maya, about the way she looked at him like he'd hung the moon and wired it for electricity himself. I have a daughter who thinks I'm capable of anything. That makes it hard to believe the world when it tells me I'm nobody. Something shifted in Elena's expression, walls coming down by inches. I like that you don't handle me with kid gloves. Everyone in my life is either afraid of me or wants something from me. You're the first person in years who's just honest. There's too little honesty in the world already. I'm not going to add to the deficit. My doctors also mentioned something else. Elena's tone changed, becoming more cautious. They said the cardiac episode could have been triggered by more than stress. There were trace amounts of medication in my system that shouldn't have been there. Medication that can cause arrhythmia. Marcus's mind flashed to the coffee cup, still in an evidence bag in his locker downstairs. I found something, the coffee cup near you when you collapsed. It smelled wrong, chemical. Her eyes widened. You kept it? Seemed like I should. Didn't know why at the time. Elena stood abruptly, and Marcus saw fear crack through her composed exterior for the first time. I need to look into this. If someone at my company tried to... She couldn't finish the sentence. Tried to kill you. Marcus finished it for her in here because someone needed to say it out loud, which means whoever did it is still here, still watching. The implications settled over both of them. Elena had asked him to come to her office, publicly acknowledged him, created a connection. If someone had tried to eliminate her once, they wouldn't hesitate to target anyone who might help her discover the truth. But Marcus thought about Maya, about teaching her that you didn't walk past people who needed help. You didn't ignore wrong things because getting involved was inconvenient. You did what was right even when it cost you. I'll bring you the cup. You can have it tested privately. Why would you do that? You could just walk away from this whole situation. The question deserved a real answer, because people who walk past elevators where someone is dying are the reason the world is broken. I won't be one of them. Elena nodded slowly, and something passed between them that felt like recognition, like finding someone who spoke your language in a country where you'd been lost for years. Marcus left her office carrying the weight of that connection. The elevator ride down felt longer than it should have, giving him too much time to think about consequences. Dan would have a field day if he knew about the coffee cup, about private meetings with the CEO. Rebecca would lecture him about risk and responsibility. But Maya would understand because he was teaching her the same lesson. Some things mattered more than safety. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena started appearing during his shift. Not obviously, not making a show of it, just happening to be working late when Marcus made his rounds on the 40th floor. The first time she was alone in the break room at 11 p.m., looking exhausted in a way that makeup couldn't hide. Couldn't sleep? Marcus asked, pushing his cleaning cart past. She leaned against the door frame. Sleep would require going home. Home would require admitting I accomplished nothing meaningful in 16 hours. Marcus set down his supplies, recognizing the pattern from his own life. What made you start this company? What was the point before it became about not stopping? The question caught her off guard, made her think instead of deflecting. My father, after his factory was destroyed, watching him lose everything, I wanted to prove that success didn't have to come at someone else's expense. But I've been so focused on winning that I forgot who I was winning for. Their conversations developed a rhythm over subsequent nights. Elena would find him cleaning conference rooms or restocking supplies, and they'd talk while Marcus worked. She told him about the private lab test results. The coffee had contained medication that could trigger cardiac arrest in the right dosage. Someone had tried to kill her, making it look like stress-induced heart failure. Someone close enough to access her private office, her personal coffee cup. Marcus told her about Maya's questions, the careful mathematics of poverty, the way single parenthood meant choosing between being present and paying rent, how he'd been doing both for a decade and it still never felt like enough. Week 4 brought Maya to work with him for the first time. Rebecca had picked up an extra shift and the backup sitter canceled, leaving Marcus with no options except bringing his daughter along. He'd done it before when she was smaller, less aware of what it meant that Daddy cleaned other people's offices while they slept. Elena found them in the break room around midnight. Maya was curled up on the couch with her marine biology textbook, reading about bioluminescent creatures in the deep ocean. She looked up when Elena entered, taking in the expensive suit and commanding presence with the frank assessment of children. "Is this your daughter?" Elena's voice gentled in a way Marcus hadn't heard before. "Maya, this is Miss Blackwood. She works here." Maya sat up straighter, suddenly self-conscious about her worn clothes and messy hair. "Hi, I'm reading about anglerfish. Did you know the males are way smaller than the females and they basically become parasites by fusing to the female's body?" Elena sat down on the couch, genuinely interested. "I didn't know that. What else have you learned?" They talked about deep-sea ecosystems and pressure adaptations while Marcus finished his rounds. When he returned 20 minutes later, Maya was explaining her theory about undiscovered species in the Mariana Trench with the passionate intensity she brought to everything she cared about. Elena listened like it was the most important information she'd ever received. After Maya fell back asleep, Elena helped Marcus clean the 40th floor. She was terrible at it, leaving streaks on glass and missing corners, but she tried with an earnestness that made him see her differently. Not CEO and custodian, just two people working side by side in a sleeping building. "She's wonderful. She looks like you." Marcus glanced at his daughter's sleeping form. "She's better than me. Smarter, braver, less willing to accept the world as it is." "You never talk about her mother." The observation hung in the air between them. Marcus kept wiping down the conference table, needing the familiar motion. Nicole left when Maya was 1 year old, said she couldn't be tied down, needed to find herself. "I've spent 10 years trying to explain to a little girl why her mother chose freedom over her." Elena's hand found his in the darkness, a brief touch that sent electricity up his arm. "Maya will grow up knowing her father chose her every single day. That's not nothing, Marcus." The touch lasted seconds, but echoed for hours after. Something was growing between them, terrifying and inevitable, and Marcus didn't know what to do about it. He was 47 years old, working nights to keep his daughter fed and clothed, existing in a completely different universe from a CEO who'd built an empire from nothing. They made no sense together. The world would judge them, mock them, tear them apart for daring to cross lines that weren't supposed to be crossed. But when she looked at him, he felt seen in a way he hadn't since before Nicole left. Like he was worth more than his job title, more than his paycheck, more than the sum of his circumstances. Week 5 brought disaster in the form of a phone call from Rebecca at 2 in the afternoon, jolting Marcus from the 4 hours of sleep he managed between morning drop-off and evening pickup. Nicole showed up at Maya's school, tried to take her. The words punched through the fog of exhaustion, snapping Marcus fully awake. "What?" "The school called me because you were sleeping, and I'm the emergency contact." Nicole had some official-looking paperwork, claiming she has a lawyer and she's filing for custody. Marcus's world narrowed to a single point of terror. Nicole hadn't contacted them in 10 years, beyond sporadic birthday cards with $20 bills inside. Maya didn't remember her mother, couldn't pick her out of a photo lineup, had built a life that didn't include the woman who'd given birth to her. She can't take her. Maya doesn't even know who she is. She has an expensive lawyer, Marcus, and intentions. Whatever happened, whatever changed, she's serious about this. Marcus hung up and stared at his apartment ceiling, mind racing through scenarios and outcomes. Custody battles cost money he didn't have. Lawyers required retainers that would wipe out the emergency fund he'd been building for Maya's college. Family court favored mothers by default, especially mothers who weren't working night shifts and raising children in two-bedroom apartments with leaky faucets. That night at work, he couldn't hide the devastation. Elena took one look at his face and knew something had shattered. What happened? The story poured out. Nicole's abandonment, 10 years of silence, the sudden reappearance with legal threats. Maya's confusion and fear when the school called Rebecca to confirm pickup authorization. The impossibility of fighting someone with resources when you were counting pennies to afford poster board for school projects. "I can help. I know the best family lawyers in the city." "I can't afford your lawyers." Marcus's response came harsher than intended, sharpened by fear and pride. "I can't afford any lawyers." Elena moved closer, her hand reaching for his arm. I'm not trying to buy you. I'm trying to help someone I care about. The words stopped him cold. Marcus turned to face her fully, seeing the sincerity in her expression. You care about me? Yes, I do. She said it simply, like stating a fact rather than making a declaration. Silence stretched between them, charged with everything they'd been dancing around for 5 weeks. The careful conversations, the midnight talks, the way her face lit up when she found him during his rounds. Marcus had been telling himself it was friendship, mutual respect, two people from different worlds finding common ground in the small hours when the powerful people slept. But it was more than that. Had been more than that since she'd looked at him in her office and admitted her embarrassment, since she'd sat on the couch with Maya talking about anglerfish, since her hand had found his in the darkness. I can't do this. Marcus forced the words out, each one cutting his throat. I can't risk my job for something that might not work out. Nicole is already using the fact that I work nights as evidence I'm an unavailable parent. If I get involved with you, if corporate finds out, if I lose my position, he couldn't finish, couldn't articulate the terror of losing both job and daughter in one catastrophic sequence. Elena's face closed off, walls rebuilding themselves brick by brick. You're right, this was a mistake. I apologize for overstepping. I'll make sure nothing I've done affects your employment. She turned to leave, and every instinct Marcus had screamed at him to call her back, to say he was wrong, to choose the terrifying possibility over safe emptiness. But he stayed silent, rooted by responsibility and fear, watching her walk away into the elevator that had brought them together. The following weeks were agony. Marcus didn't see Elena, didn't cross paths during his rounds, didn't find her working late in conference rooms. She'd vanished back into the stratosphere where she belonged, leaving him alone with the hollow ache of choosing right over want. Maya noticed his mood darkening, asked him what was wrong with the perception children had for adult unhappiness. Rebecca cornered him one morning, demanding to know why he looked like he was grieving. Marcus deflected both of them, unable to articulate that he'd walked away from something real because he was too afraid to risk everything for it. Nicole's lawyer sent formal documentation. She was filing for full custody, citing Marcus's night shift schedule, their modest living situation, his inability to provide enrichment activities and educational opportunities. The implication was clear. Marcus was poor, therefore insufficient, therefore unworthy of his own daughter. The free legal aid lawyer assigned to his case was 26 and overwhelmed, juggling 70 cases with the exhaustion of someone who'd already burned out. She told Marcus honestly that custody battles favored mothers, especially mothers who could demonstrate financial stability and daytime availability. His best hope was joint custody, weekends and holidays, watching Maya grow up through scheduled visitations. Week 6 brought a new corporate memo distributed to all employees. Fraternization between staff and executives was now prohibited. Personal conversations during work hours were forbidden. Security cameras were being installed in all common areas. Violation could result in termination. Dan called Marcus into his office with the memo in hand. Someone on the board noticed Ms. Blackwood's late nights. This is company-wide, but we both know it's targeted. Stay away from her, Marcus. Whatever you two had going, it's done. Marcus nodded, but rage burned in his chest. Someone had noticed Elena's pattern, her conversations with him, and moved to isolate her from potential allies. Someone who'd tried to kill her once was now ensuring she stayed vulnerable, stayed alone, stayed controllable. He thought about that coffee cup, about someone calculating the exact dosage to cause cardiac arrest, about the cold precision required to murder a person you saw every day. Someone on Elena's board had tried to eliminate her and was now systematically destroying her support system. Week 7 arrived with brutal December cold, and Marcus's growing certainty that walking away had been the wrong choice. He couldn't protect Maya by being alone and scared. He couldn't teach his daughter to stand up for what mattered while running from the thing that mattered most. At 3 in the morning, he found Elena waiting by his car in the underground parking garage. She looked smaller than usual, wrapped in a coat too thin for the weather, breath fogging in the freezing air. Marcus's heart seized at the sight of her. They told you, he said. She nodded. My CFO Raymond Fisher called an emergency board meeting. suggested I'm having a breakdown, that you're taking advantage of my fragile mental state. Her laugh was bitter. They recommended I increase security, limit my after-hours presence, remove myself from situations where I might make poor decisions. Of course that's what they think. Couldn't possibly be that you enjoy talking to me. Couldn't be that I see you as more than a paycheck. Elena stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could see the gold flecks in her eyes. What do you see me as, Marcus? The question hung between them, loaded with everything they'd been avoiding for weeks. Marcus could lie, retreat to safety, protect himself and Maya from the complications that would follow. Or he could tell the truth and risk everything. I see someone who forgot how to be anything except successful. Someone brilliant and driven who's so afraid of being ordinary that she built a fortress around herself. Someone lonely who won't admit it because loneliness suggests weakness. He took a breath. Someone I can't stop thinking about even though I know better. Even though we make no sense. Even though getting involved would complicate my life in ways I can't afford. Elena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I see someone who thinks he doesn't deserve good things because he spent so long just surviving. Someone kind and present who really sees people in a way most never learn. Someone who kissed me back to life and walked away like it was nothing. Her voice dropped. Like he doesn't expect gratitude or recognition or love. The word hung in the frozen air between them. Acknowledged but not acknowledged. Impossible to ignore. Marcus closed the distance, his hand cupping her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. Her skin was cold from waiting, warm where his palm pressed. This is a terrible idea. I know. Elena's whisper barely reached him. We're from different worlds. I know. People will judge, say terrible things about both of us. I know. Marcus leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to pull back, to reconsider, to choose the safe path. But Elena rose up to meet him, and when their lips touched, it was nothing like desperate mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. This was want and recognition and acknowledgement of something that had been building since she'd first looked at his name tag and felt ashamed. Elena's hands fisted in his jacket, pulling him closer. Marcus wrapped his arms around her, feeling her shiver against him in the December cold. The kiss deepened, months of careful distance collapsing into immediate need. When they broke apart, Elena's expression was fierce. I don't care what they think. I'm tired of living according to other people's expectations. Marcus wanted to believe it could be that simple, but he thought about Maya, about the custody battle, about the one he couldn't afford to lose. Nicole's lawyer would use any ammunition available, and a relationship with a billionaire CEO would paint him as opportunistic, unstable, using his daughter to get to wealth. I have a daughter who depends on me. I can't risk my job for something that might not work out. The words felt like betrayal even as he spoke them. Nicole is already trying to take her. If I lose my income, lose my position because of corporate policy, he couldn't finish, couldn't voice the terror of losing everything. Elena's face transformed, walls rebuilding with visible effort. You're right. This was a mistake. I apologize. Her voice went cold, professional. I'll make certain the fraternization policy doesn't affect your employment. You have my word. She turned to leave, heels clicking against concrete with terrible finality. Marcus watched her walk away, every instinct screaming to call her back, to say he was wrong, to choose possibility over fear. But he stayed frozen, paralyzed by responsibility and terror, watching the elevator doors close on what might have been. Marcus sat in his car afterward, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the ache in his chest. His phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. Nicole filed formal custody petition. Court hearing in 6 weeks. He looked up at Riverside Tower, counting floors until he found the 40th, where Elena's office light still burned at 3:30 in the morning. Two people in crisis, pushing apart when they should be pulling together. Two people too afraid to choose what they wanted over what was safe. Marcus started his car and drove home through empty streets, carrying the weight of that choice. He didn't know that walking away would make everything worse. Didn't know that sometimes the safest choice was the most dangerous one. Didn't know that in 6 weeks, he'd be standing in that parking garage again, watching his world disintegrate, understanding too late that fear had made him lose the one thing worth fighting for. But for now, he just drove. alone in the dark, heading toward an apartment where Maya slept peacefully, unaware that her father had just made the mistake that would nearly cost them everything. 3 weeks of silence stretched between them like an ocean neither could cross. Marcus kept his head down during shifts, avoided the 40th floor entirely, took stairs when the executive elevator appeared. Dan had made the stakes clear. Fraternization meant termination, and termination meant losing Maya to a woman who'd abandoned her a decade ago. Rebecca noticed the change immediately, cornering him after he picked up Maya one Thursday afternoon. "You look like someone died." "Nobody died." "Then why do you have that expression? The one you had after Nicole left." Marcus deflected by asking about Maya's science project, the poster board they still needed to buy, anything to avoid discussing the hollow space that had opened in his chest. He'd made the right choice, the responsible choice, the choice that protected his daughter and his livelihood. So why did it feel like he'd amputated something vital? Maya asked questions too, noticing details adults tried to hide. "Why don't we go to the 40th floor anymore? I liked reading there while you worked." "Just changing up the routine, kiddo." But children knew when adults were lying, even when the lies were meant to protect them. Elena threw herself into work with renewed intensity, or so Marcus heard through workplace gossip that filtered down to the maintenance department. She'd stopped her late-night presence entirely, coming in early instead, leaving before the night shift arrived. The break room on 40 hummed with speculation about her health, her stability, whether the cardiac episode had damaged more than just her heart. Marcus collected fragments of information the way he collected trash, methodically, without judgment, understanding that everything revealed something if you paid attention. Raymond Fisher had been seen in closed-door meetings with 3 board members. Stock analysts were questioning Blackwood Industries' leadership direction. A major client had requested a meeting to discuss contract renewal terms, unusual for an account that had been stable for years. Something was moving beneath the surface, pressure building toward an eruption Marcus could sense but not prevent. The coffee cups sat in his locker like evidence for a trial that would never happen, proof of attempted murder that no one would believe because who would trust a janitor's instinct over a CFO's reputation? Week 9 brought Maya's school calling at 2 in the afternoon, shattering what passed for sleep in Marcus's fractured schedule. The nurse's voice carried controlled urgency that made his stomach drop before she finished the first sentence. "Mr. Hayes, Maya had an accident on the playground. She fell from the climbing structure and hit her head on the metal slide. She was unconscious for approximately 30 seconds. The ambulance is transporting her to St. Catherine's Hospital." Time compressed and expanded simultaneously. Marcus was in his car without remembering getting dressed, driving too fast through afternoon traffic, every red light an eternity. His hands shook on the steering wheel. Maya was everything. His reason for working nights, his motivation for staying upright when exhaustion tried to drag him under, his proof that love could be stronger than biology or law or circumstance. If something happened to her, if she'd fractured her skull or developed a brain bleed or suffered damage that medical science couldn't repair, Marcus didn't know how his heart would continue beating. She was 11 years old and wanted to study bioluminescent creatures in the deepest parts of the ocean, and she couldn't do that if she didn't wake up. St. Catherine's emergency department was chaos controlled by triage nurses who'd seen everything and were impressed by nothing. Marcus gave Maya's name at the desk, trying to keep his voice steady, failing completely. The nurse directed him to exam room 4 with efficiency that suggested she dealt with terrified parents every hour of every shift. But when Marcus pushed through the door, someone was already there. Elena sat in the chair beside Maya's bed, holding the girl's hand, speaking in low tones about constellations visible from different latitudes. Maya had a bandage wrapped around her forehead, her face pale against the white pillow, but her eyes were open and tracking Elena's words with the focus she brought to subjects that interested her. Elena looked up when Marcus entered, and the relief that flooded her expression was so raw it hurt to witness. "I heard about the accident. I came as soon as the alert triggered." Marcus's legs nearly gave out. "What alert?" "I set up monitoring on Maya's name across local hospital systems." Elena's admission was quiet, almost embarrassed. "After the custody petition was filed, I wanted to make sure. I just needed to know if anything happened." The implications settled over Marcus like a blanket. Elena had been watching over his daughter from a distance, unable to be present but refusing to be completely absent. She'd never stopped caring, had just buried it under corporate necessity and self-preservation instinct. A doctor entered with the brisk confidence of someone who delivered news dozens of times daily. Concussion protocol, no fractures detected on CT scan, neurological responses normal, could go home with instructions for monitoring overnight. Maya would be fine, probably have a headache for a few days, needed to avoid screens and bright lights and activities that could result in secondary impact. Maya's voice came drowsy from the bed. The lady stayed with me in the ambulance. She held my hand and told me about how sailors use stars to navigate. Marcus looked at Elena, who'd ridden in the ambulance with his daughter, who'd been there when he couldn't be, who'd made sure Maya wasn't alone in those terrifying minutes before he arrived. Something cracked in his chest, all the careful distance he'd built crumbling like wet sand. Thank you. The words were completely insufficient for what he meant, for what he felt, for the gratitude and longing and regret that threatened to overwhelm him. Elena stood, preparing to leave now that Marcus was here. I should go, let you two have privacy. But Maya's hand shot out, grabbing Elena's wrist with surprising strength for someone who'd just suffered a head injury. Don't go, please. The please broke something in both adults. Elena sank back into the chair, looking to Marcus for permission he gave with a nod that felt like surrender and relief in equal measure. The hospital discharged Maya 2 hours later with a packet of instructions and a prescription for pain medication Marcus couldn't quite afford. Elena walked them to the parking garage, her heels clicking against concrete in the same rhythm as that night 3 weeks ago when everything had fallen apart. At Marcus's car, Elena hesitated. I can drive you both home. You shouldn't be driving when you're this shaken. Pride wanted to refuse, but exhaustion and fear had stripped away most of his defenses. Okay. Elena's car was exactly what Marcus expected. German engineering, leather seats, technology that probably cost more than his annual salary. Maya fell asleep in the back within 5 minutes, lulled by warmth and the stress crash following adrenaline. Marcus gave directions to his apartment complex, watching Elena navigate streets she'd probably never driven before, seeing his neighborhood through her eyes. The building looked shabbier than usual, paint peeling around window frames, trash bins overflowing by the side entrance. Marcus's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a structure that had been built in the 70s and maintained with minimal enthusiasm. But it was home, filled with Maya's drawings and science projects, and the accumulated evidence of a childhood built from love rather than money. Elena helped get Maya upstairs and settled into bed with the careful attention of someone who'd never performed this task before but understood its importance. She arranged pillows, adjusted the blanket, set a glass of water on the nightstand with the focus she probably brought to contract negotiations. When Maya was sleeping peacefully, Elena and Marcus stood in the small living room that served as dining area, an office, and entertainment center. Elena studied everything with visible interest. Photos documenting Maya's growth from infant to present, crayon drawings taped to walls, the mobile of the solar system Marcus had assembled from a kit 3 Christmases ago. This is a real home. Elena's voice carried something that might have been envy. I have a penthouse that costs more than most houses in this city. It's beautiful and empty, and I hate being there. Marcus made coffee because he needed his hands busy, needed the familiar routine to ground him. Why are you really here, Elena? She accepted the mug he offered, wrapping both hands around it like she needed the warmth. Because I haven't been able to stop thinking about you for 3 weeks. Because I've been investigating Raymond, and the conspiracy goes deeper than I imagined. Because when I got the alert about Maya, I didn't think, I just moved. And because, she met his eyes, I'm tired of playing it safe with everything that matters. I'm terrified. Marcus's confession came easier than expected. I've spent 11 years focused on being a good father. I told myself that was enough, that wanting more was selfish, but I'm lonely, Elena. Some days it feels like drowning, and then you're there and suddenly I can breathe, and that scares me more than anything. Elena set down her coffee, closed the distance between them. What if we're scared together? What if we just try and see what happens? Nicole will use this against me in court. Raymond will use it to destroy you at the company. We're handing our enemies ammunition. Then we fight. Together. Elena's hand found his, fingers interlacing. I'm done letting fear make my decisions. I've spent 44 years building walls, and I'm tired, Marcus. I'm so tired of being alone inside them. Marcus thought about teaching Maya that love was worth the risk, that some things mattered more than safety. He thought about his daughter asking why he was sad, about Rebecca's observation that he looked like someone had died. He thought about 3 weeks of walking through his life like a ghost, technically present but fundamentally absent. Maya comes first, always. If this affects her negatively, if the custody battle gets worse because of us, I'll walk away. No hesitation. Elena's expression showed she understood the weight of that promise. I wouldn't expect anything less. I want to add to your lives, not complicate them. I want to be part of something real instead of just successful. They stood in Marcus's tiny living room, hands joined, breathing in sync, making a choice that would change everything. The night passed in 2-hour increments as they checked on Maya per hospital protocol, taking turns so the other could rest. Around 4 in the morning, Marcus dozed off with his head on Elena's shoulder, and when he woke, he found her and Maya at the kitchen table drawing pictures of deep-sea creatures. Maya explained bioluminescence with passionate intensity, describing how organisms created their own light in environments where no sunlight reached. Elena listened like it was graduate-level research instead of an 11-year-old's enthusiasm, asking questions that showed genuine interest rather than polite patience. At the door later, after Maya had gone back to sleep, Elena touched Marcus's face with gentle fingers. I'm going to change things at the company. Better wages for custodial staff, comprehensive health insurance, paid sick leave. Not because of us, but because you were right about people mattering. Corporate will say I manipulated you, that I saved your life and used it as leverage. Elena's eyes hardened with determination Marcus had only seen directed at business challenges before. Let them say it. It's the right thing to do. I just needed someone to remind me what right looks like. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of promise, and Marcus felt the hollow space in his chest beginning to fill with something that felt dangerously like hope. The following months developed a rhythm of careful partnership. Marcus became Elena's inside source, using his maintenance access to gather information on Raymond's activities. He photographed documents left on conference room tables, recorded conversations through doors that weren't quite closed, mapped the patterns of late-night meetings between the CFO and board members who should have been adversaries. They communicated through burner phones purchased with cash, meeting at Marcus's apartment instead of corporate buildings with their newly installed surveillance systems. Elena showed up several nights a week, arriving in work clothes and changing into jeans and a sweater she kept in Marcus's closet. They'd work through evidence while Maya did homework, 3 of them moving around the small space with increasing comfort. Maya adjusted with the resilience of children, claiming Elena as family with matter-of-fact certainty. She asked Elena to read bedtime stories, drafted her for science project assistance, drew pictures of my family that included all 3 of them. Elena learned to check homework without treating it like a business report, to play board games without turning them into negotiations, to fail at cooking without seeing it as personal inadequacy. Marcus watched her transform from CEO to human being, shedding layers of corporate armor to reveal someone who laughed at her own mistakes and cried during animated movies about fish. She was still brilliant and driven and occasionally terrifying in her focus, but now those qualities existed alongside vulnerability and playfulness, and the capacity for joy she'd buried under decades of achievement. He taught her that accepting help wasn't weakness, that building something together was stronger than maintaining independence at all costs. They had fights about money and class, about Marcus's pride and Elena's tendency to solve problems by throwing resources at them, about work-life balance and what they were teaching Maya about priorities. But they learned to argue productively, to listen instead of defending, to apologize and mean it. The evidence against Raymond accumulated like snow before an avalanche. Marcus discovered a meeting between the CFO and Blackwood Industries' largest client, a manufacturing contract worth $40 million annually. Raymond was offering them better terms if they'd switch to his new company once he assumed control. He wasn't just planning to oust Elena, He was preparing to steal her client base, dismantle everything she'd built, and profit from the wreckage. Timeline was critical. The annual shareholder meeting was scheduled for 4 months out. Raymond needed to force a vote before then, which meant escalating pressure on Elena's leadership. He'd been quietly building his faction, promising board members that change would benefit everyone except the woman who'd built the company from nothing. Elena sat at Marcus's kitchen table late one night, surrounded by documents and photographs, her face drawn with exhaustion. I have to go public with this, present the evidence, force Raymond out before he destroys everything. Going public means media scrutiny, questions about us. I know. Which gives Nicole ammunition for the custody case. Her lawyer will say, I'm using Maya to get to your money. Elena's hand covered his on the table. What's the alternative? Let Raymond win? Teach Maya that bullies succeed when good people stay quiet? Marcus thought about his daughter, about the lessons they were teaching through actions rather than words. Maya watched everything, absorbed everything, built her understanding of the world from what her parents did when faced with impossible choices. We fight both battles together. But Nicole's lawyer moved first, filing a motion that landed like a bomb in Marcus's mailbox. The attorney cited Marcus's relationship with Elena as evidence of instability, claiming he was using his daughter to access wealth, that his judgment was compromised, that Maya deserved a stable two-parent household instead of a father chasing money through inappropriate relationships. The custody hearing was scheduled for the same month as the shareholder meeting. Two battles, same timeline, both capable of destroying everything Marcus had built. They sat in his apartment after Maya was asleep, trying to find strategy in chaos. Marcus wanted to end the relationship publicly, claim it had been nothing serious, protect both Elena's company and his custody case through sacrifice. Elena refused absolutely. I'm done hiding, done pretending. Raymond wins if we let him make us ashamed of what we have. You'll lose the company. Maybe, but I'll have integrity. And you and Maya, that matters more. I'll lose her. Marcus's voice broke on the words. No judge will award custody to a father in a scandalous relationship when the mother can offer stability. Then we prove stability looks different than they think. We show them love and commitment and partnership. Elena's determination blazed in her eyes. We fight for what matters instead of surrendering to what's expected. Month 9 brought Elena's emergency board meeting where she presented evidence of Raymond's conspiracy, emails detailing the client theft scheme, recordings of meetings where he planned the hostile takeover, witness statements from employees who'd been approached to join his new venture. Raymond sat through the presentation with calculated calm, then delivered his rebuttal with the confidence of someone who'd prepared for this exact scenario. These are desperate fabrications from someone whose mental stability has been questioned since the cardiac episode. Everyone in this room knows Ms. Blackwood has been behaving erratically, conducting an inappropriate relationship with a custodial employee, making decisions based on emotion rather than business sense. His smile was shark-like. I've served this company for 15 years with loyalty and dedication. Ms. Blackwood's accusations are the last gasps of a leader who knows she's losing control. The board split cleanly down the middle, 6 members believing Elena, 6 believing Raymond, creating a stalemate that would hold until the shareholder vote. Raymond had planned well, cultivated relationships carefully, positioned himself as the stable alternative to a CEO who'd lost her way. The next morning, tabloid photos appeared across social media. Marcus and Elena leaving the hospital with Maya. Elena entering Marcus's building at dawn. Close-ups of their hands intertwined, their faces showing exhaustion and intimacy. Headlines screamed, "Billionaire CEO's secret affair with Janitor," and Elena Blackwood slumming? Office romance with maintenance worker. Paparazzi materialized outside Marcus's apartment building and Maya's school. Parents called the principal complaining about the media circus affecting their children's education. Nicole's lawyer filed an emergency motion claiming Marcus was exposing Maya to instability and scandal, requesting immediate temporary custody pending the full hearing. Marcus wanted to dissolve publicly, issue a statement saying the relationship was over, protect Elena's reputation and his custody case through strategic retreat. But Elena scheduled a press conference before he could, announcing it through official channels with professional efficiency that left no room for debate. The conference room at Blackwood Industries was packed with reporters and cameras and the hungry energy of media sensing blood in the water. Elena walked to the podium alone, but her eyes found Marcus standing in the back, holding his ground because running would teach Maya that love required hiding. I'm going to address the rumors directly. Elena's voice carried the same authority she brought to earnings calls and contract negotiations. Yes, I'm in a relationship with Marcus Hayes. He's a maintenance supervisor at this company. He saved my life when I suffered a cardiac episode 11 weeks ago. He showed me what integrity looks like when I'd forgotten. He reminded me that a company's value is measured in the people it employs, not just the profits it generates. She paused, letting the words settle. My CFO, Raymond Fisher, tried to murder me by poisoning my coffee with medication that triggered cardiac arrest. When that failed, he began systematically undermining my leadership and planning to steal this company's client base. I'm presenting evidence to the SEC and local police. Mr. Fisher will be suspended pending investigation. The room erupted in questions shouted over each other, but Elena raised a hand for silence. The shareholder vote will determine this company's future. I'm fighting for Blackwood Industries, and I'm fighting for my right to love who I choose. Those two things aren't contradictory. They're both about refusing to let bullies and cowards dictate terms. Marcus felt his throat close with emotion, watching Elena stand alone in front of hostile media, claiming their relationship publicly, refusing to apologize or retreat or compromise. She was magnificent and terrifying and completely committed to a path that might destroy her. After the press conference, Raymond intercepted Elena in the hallway outside her office. Marcus was close enough to hear, close enough to intervene if necessary, but Elena's posture told him to wait. You just destroyed your company. Raymond's voice carried satisfied certainty. Shareholders won't support a CEO drowning in this much drama. And you destroyed his custody case too. No judge awards a child to a father dating someone accused of exploitation. He leaned closer. Here's my offer. Resign, give me the company, and I'll withdraw my statements to Nicole's lawyer. Or keep fighting, lose everything, and watch him lose his daughter. Elena's face showed the impact of that ultimatum like physical blows. She walked to Marcus's apartment that night, carrying defeat in her shoulders, the weight of impossible choices visible in every movement. He's right, I've made everything worse. You should end this publicly. Protect yourself and Maya. Marcus pulled her close, feeling her shaking against him. I won't. We fight together or not at all. You'll lose her. Maybe, but walking away guarantees I lose you, and I can't do that again. I'd rather fight and fail than surrender without trying. They held each other in the darkness of his living room, trying to find courage in proximity. Neither of them heard Maya's door open, didn't realize she'd been listening until her voice cut through their despair. Are you breaking up because of me? Both adults froze. Maya stood in her pajamas decorated with sea creatures, hair tangled from sleep, face showing an understanding that went beyond her years. I heard Daddy say to walk away, but Elena, I don't want you to go. Tears spilled down Maya's cheeks. I already lost one mom. I don't want to lose another one. Elena crossed the room and dropped to her knees, pulling Maya into a hug that looked like both of them were drowning and each other was the only life raft. I'm not going anywhere, I promise. Marcus joined them on the floor, three of them holding each other against whatever came next. They'd made their choice, to fight together, to refuse surrender, to trust that love could be stronger than law or money or the combined forces arrayed against them. Outside, the city hummed with its millions of individual struggles and triumphs. Somewhere, Nicole was plotting with her expensive lawyer. Raymond was consolidating power, preparing for the shareholder vote. The media was already writing tomorrow's headlines about the scandal that was consuming Blackwood Industries and destroying a single father's custody case. But inside Marcus's small apartment, three people who'd chosen each other against all logic held on tight and refused to let go. They didn't know if fighting would be enough, didn't know if courage could overcome circumstance, didn't know if the world would let them keep what they'd built from crisis and choice and daily commitment. But they knew they wouldn't find out by hiding, wouldn't learn what was possible by playing safe. wouldn't teach Maya strength by demonstrating weakness. So they held each other in the darkness and prepared for war. Month 13 arrived with two simultaneous wars requiring strategies Marcus couldn't afford. Elena battled for her company through conference rooms and legal briefs, while he fought for Maya through family court procedures that felt designed to punish poverty. Both were exhausting, expensive, and consuming every resource they possessed. Marcus's promotion to day shift supervisor came through based on performance metrics documented over 18 months. Improved efficiency ratings, reduced supply costs, mentorship of newer employees that decreased turnover by 30%. Dan handed him the paperwork with gruff acknowledgement that merit occasionally won over politics. Better hours meant seeing Maya off to school and being home for dinner, but the pay increase barely covered the legal fees draining his savings account weekly. Maya started therapy at Rebecca's insistence, processing media attention and custody fears with a counselor who specialized in children navigating parental conflict. Marcus sat in the waiting room during sessions, watching other families fracture under pressure, wondering if love was ever enough when systems were designed to favor wealth and conventional arrangements. Nicole's lawyer was a woman named Patricia Vance, who'd built her career on high-profile custody cases and knew exactly which pressure points to target. She filed motions with strategic precision, temporary custody modification requests, allegations of parental alienation, demands for psychological evaluation. Each filing cost Marcus money he didn't have and sleep he couldn't spare. Rebecca pulled him aside one evening after picking up Maya from school. Nicole's engagement announcement went public today. Derek Cunningham, commercial real estate developer, net worth estimated at $200 million. They're getting married in 6 months. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Nicole hadn't returned because of maternal instinct or regret about abandonment. She'd returned because Derek Cunningham wanted the appearance of family, the image of stability that included a well-mannered daughter who could be displayed at charity functions and business dinners. She's using Maya as an accessory. That's exactly what she's doing, but proving it requires evidence, not just suspicion. Marcus thought about his years documenting corporate corruption, photographing documents, and recording conversations. The same skills could work outside office buildings if he was willing to cross ethical lines that made him uncomfortable. But Maya's future hung in the balance, and discomfort seemed like a luxury he couldn't afford. He arranged a meeting with Nicole through her lawyer, requesting discussion about Maya's best interests outside the adversarial court context. They met at an upscale cafe in a neighborhood where Marcus's car looked conspicuously out of place, where the coffee cost more than his hourly wage and everyone spoke in modulated tones about things that required money to understand. Nicole looked different from his memories. Expensive highlights in her hair, designer clothes that probably cost more than Maya's yearly school expenses, the polished veneer of someone who'd reinvented herself completely. She greeted him with false warmth that set his teeth on edge. "Marcus, I'm glad we're finally talking reasonably about this." He'd worn a wire, one-party consent recording legal in their state, feeling like a criminal, even though the law was on his side. The small device pressed against his chest under his shirt, capturing every word for the lawyer who'd helped him understand that sometimes you had to play dirty to protect what mattered. "I want what's best for Maya. I thought we could discuss arrangements that work for everyone." Oh. Nicole added sugar to her coffee with practiced elegance. "I've changed, Marcus. I'm stable now, engaged to a wonderful man. Derek can provide for Maya in ways you simply cannot. Private schools, enrichment activities, exposure to culture and society." Marcus let the implication hang, waiting for her to elaborate. The recording device captured ambient noise, the murmur of other conversations, the hiss of the espresso machine. "What does Derek think about Maya?" Nicole's expression shifted slightly, confidence breaking around the edges. "He thinks she needs refinement. Your influence has made her rough around the edges. But a good boarding school can correct that, teach her proper manners and social graces." Boarding school? She's 11 years old. She deserves better than living in a cramped apartment with a father who works nights. Better than associating with someone like your girlfriend. The word carried contempt. "Derek and I can give her the life she deserves. You should want that for her instead of being selfish." Marcus forced himself to stay calm, to let her keep talking. Tell me about the life you're planning for her. Nicole warmed to the topic, describing a future where Maya attended prestigious schools, learned French and piano, dressed appropriately for her station, became the kind of daughter who enhanced rather than embarrassed. She talked about molding and correcting and fixing, never once mentioning love or acceptance or letting Maya choose who she wanted to become. Derek's business associates will be impressed. A bright, well-mannered daughter shows stability and family values. It's important for his reputation. There it was, the admission captured digitally, preserved forever. Nicole wanted Maya for image, for social currency, for the appearance of maternal devotion without the reality of daily presence. She wanted a prop, not a child. Marcus thanked her for meeting, promised to consider her points, and left before his rage could betray the performance. In his car, he removed the recording device with shaking hands and called his lawyer, who listened to the playback with grim satisfaction. This is exactly what we needed. A judge will hear her own words describing Maya as a social asset rather than a person to love. But the custody hearing was still weeks away, and Raymond's shareholder meeting loomed with equal menace. Elena worked 18-hour days preparing her defense, gathering support from institutional investors, trying to prevent the hostile takeover that would destroy everything she'd built. The SEC investigation into Raymond's conspiracy was proceeding with bureaucratic slowness, unlikely to conclude before the vote that would determine corporate control. Marcus organized something Elena didn't know about, reaching out to maintenance staff and warehouse workers and production line employees whose lives had changed under Elena's reforms. Health insurance that covered families, wages that let them save for emergencies instead of living paycheck to paycheck, paid sick leave that meant choosing between health and rent wasn't necessary anymore. 200 employees signed a petition requesting to speak at the shareholder meeting. They wanted to present a unified statement supporting Elena's leadership, demonstrating that reforms created loyalty rather than destroying profitability. Marcus coordinated the effort quietly, understanding that grassroots support might sway undecided shareholders in ways that financial projections couldn't. The shareholder meeting took place in a hotel ballroom rented for the occasion, filled with investors holding voting power and board members positioning for advantage. Marcus sat in the back with other employees who'd taken personal time to attend, watching Elena present company performance with the same focused intensity she brought to everything. Stock price up 23% since reform's implementation. Employee satisfaction scores highest in company history. Client retention at 94% despite industry turbulence. Revenue growth outpacing competitors by significant margins. The numbers supported her leadership objectively, mathematically, without requiring subjective judgment about relationships or appropriateness. But Raymond countered with different numbers. Projected growth under new leadership, efficiency gains from restructured labor costs, competitive advantages from eliminating unnecessary benefits programs. He painted Elena as soft, emotional, distracted by personal drama when the company required ruthless focus. Ms. Blackwood's judgment has been compromised since her cardiac episode. Her inappropriate relationship with a subordinate employee demonstrates poor decision-making. This company needs stable, traditional leadership focused on shareholder value rather than personal agendas. The employees requested their speaking opportunity. Marcus watched colleagues stand and present testimony about how reforms had changed their lives. The single mother who could afford her son's asthma medication, the warehouse supervisor who'd started community college classes because he finally had financial breathing room, the janitor who no longer worked 3 jobs just to survive. They spoke about dignity and respect, about feeling valued rather than disposable, about loyalty created through genuine care rather than demanded through desperation. The undecided shareholders listened with visible discomfort, perhaps recognizing their own complicity in systems that treated humans as line items on balance sheets. Elena's closing statement was brief and devastating. I built this company to prove success doesn't require destroying people. My father lost everything to corporate greed, and I swore I'd never become that kind of leader. Raymond wants to take us backward, to treat employees as costs to minimize rather than assets to invest in. The choice is yours, but understand what you're choosing: profit at any price or profit with principle. The vote was called. Electronic tallying took minutes that felt like hours, Results displayed on screens throughout the ballroom. Elena, 52%. Raymond, 48%. She'd won by the narrowest possible margin, saved by institutional investors who'd been swayed by employee testimony and documentation of sustainable growth. Raymond stormed from the ballroom with his faction trailing behind, threats of legal action and appeals already being drafted. But he'd lost the official vote, and the SEC investigation would ensure he faced consequences for the conspiracy, even if criminal charges proved difficult. Elena found Marcus afterward, her face showing exhaustion and relief in equal measure. They held each other in the hotel corridor while shareholders filed past, some looking scandalized, others nodding approval, most simply indifferent to the human drama playing out between financial decisions. "We won." Elena's voice shook against his shoulder. "Half the battle. Custody hearing is next week." They drove to Marcus's apartment in silence, processing victory and dreading what came next. Maya was waiting with Rebecca, bouncing with nervous energy as soon as they walked through the door. "Did you win?" "Yes, the company is safe." Maya threw her arms around Elena's waist. "I knew you would. You're the smartest person I know." Elena's expression crumbled into something between laughter and tears. She knelt to Maya's level, hands gentle on the girl's shoulders. "Next week is the custody hearing. You might have to talk to the judge. Are you okay with that?" Maya's face went serious in the way of children forced to grow up faster than they should. "I'll tell them I want to stay with Daddy. I'll tell them the truth." The week before the hearing dragged with anticipatory dread. Marcus prepared testimony with his lawyer, reviewing questions Patricia Vance would likely ask, practicing responses that balanced honesty with strategic presentation. Elena prepared separately, knowing she'd be called as a witness and cross-examined about their relationship, their future plans, her influence on Maya's life. Rebecca offered to testify about Marcus's dedication as a father, the countless mornings she'd watched him sacrifice sleep and health and personal desires to ensure Maya had everything she needed. The pediatrician agreed to provide records showing consistent care and appropriate developmental milestones. Maya's therapist prepared a report documenting secure attachment and healthy emotional processing. But Patricia Vance had ammunition too. Media coverage of the scandal, photographs of paparazzi outside Maya's school, statements from parents concerned about disruption. She'd paint Marcus as selfish, choosing an inappropriate relationship over his daughter's stability, exposing her to scrutiny that no child should experience. Family court was smaller than Marcus expected, less dramatic than television suggested. Judge Margaret Chen presided with efficient compassion, reviewing case files while attorneys made opening statements. Nicole sat at the plaintiff's table looking perfectly composed, playing the role of concerned mother with practiced skill. Patricia Vance presented Nicole's case with professional precision. 10 years of absence framed as necessary personal growth. Current stability demonstrated through engagement to a successful businessman. Financial resources that could provide educational and social advantages. She called Derek Cunningham as a witness, who testified about his commitment to building a family, his willingness to be a father figure, his ability to provide opportunities Marcus couldn't match. Then she played the media coverage, showing headlines and photographs and tabloid speculation. She questioned Marcus about his relationship timeline, his judgment in dating his boss, his decision to expose Maya to public scrutiny. Each question was designed to make him look reckless, irresponsible, more focused on romance than parenting. Marcus's lawyer countered with the recording from the cafe, playing Nicole's own words about boarding schools and refinement and social assets. The courtroom fell silent as Nicole's voice filled the space, describing plans that revealed Maya as means to an end rather than a person to love. Rebecca testified about Marcus's consistent presence, the homework help in school events and medical appointments that marked active parenting over 11 years. The therapist presented professional assessment of Maya's secure attachment to her father, her healthy adjustment despite difficult circumstances, her clear preference for current living arrangements. Elena was called last, questioned about her intentions toward Marcus and Maya, her financial influence on the family dynamics, her plans for the future. She answered with the same directness she'd shown at the press conference, refusing to apologize or minimize their relationship. "I love Marcus and I love Maya. I want to be part of their lives permanently. I understand my presence complicates the custody situation, but I won't pretend my feelings are less than they are. Patricia Vance tried to trap her into admitting manipulation or undue influence, but Elena remained calm under cross-examination. Marcus makes his own decisions. Maya forms her own attachments. I'm not trying to replace anyone or buy anyone. I'm just trying to be present and supportive and honest about caring. Judge Chen called a recess before Maya's testimony, allowing the girl to meet privately in chambers rather than on the courtroom floor. Marcus wasn't allowed in the room, forced to wait outside while his daughter explained to a stranger which parent she wanted to live with. 30 minutes passed like hours. When the door finally opened, Maya emerged with red-rimmed eyes but steady expression. She walked straight to Marcus and climbed into his lap despite being nearly too big for it, burying her face in his shoulder. Judge Chen returned to the bench and delivered her ruling with judicial formality that softened around the edges with genuine compassion. Primary physical custody remains with Marcus Hayes. Nicole Hayes is granted supervised visitation, 4 hours twice monthly, with potential for modification after 6 months of consistent participation. The court finds that Maya's best interests are served by maintaining stability with the parent who has been continuously present and engaged throughout her life. The judge's reasoning was thorough and damning for Nicole's case. Ms. Hayes' recording reveals priorities focused on social advantage rather than parental bonding. Her 10-year absence, followed by sudden interest coinciding with engagement, suggests motivations unrelated to the child's welfare. Mr. Hayes has demonstrated consistent, loving parenting despite challenging financial circumstances. The court is not persuaded that wealth alone constitutes better parenting, particularly when the child has thrived in her current environment. Marcus felt his legs go weak with relief so profound it was almost painful. Maya was safe. Nicole couldn't take her, couldn't ship her off to boarding schools, couldn't mold her into an accessory for her new life. They'd won, barely, against odds that should have crushed them. Outside the courthouse, photographers captured their embrace, Marcus holding Maya while Elena wrapped arms around both of them. 3 people who'd chosen each other against every logical argument. But this time the photos felt different, triumphant rather than scandalous. Evidence of something real instead of something shameful. The following months settled into rhythms that felt increasingly like normal life. Elena sold her penthouse, the empty space that had never been home, and searched for something closer to Marcus's neighborhood. They looked at properties together, Maya contributing opinions about bedroom sizes and proximity to schools, the 3 of them building consensus about what home should look like. The brownstone they chose was in a family neighborhood where kids played street hockey and neighbors actually talked to each other. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, excellent school district, close enough to Marcus's work and Maya's current school to minimize disruption. Elena put both their names on the deed equally, refusing to let money create power imbalance in their relationship. Marcus enrolled in evening business administration classes at community college, not because he needed a degree, but because learning felt like possibility. Elena restructured her role at Blackwood Industries, delegating operational oversight to trusted executives, leaving by 6 p.m. most evenings so she could be present for dinner and homework and the ordinary moments that built family. Maya thrived in the new configuration, gaining confidence from having 2 adults invested in her success, learning that family could be chosen as well as biological. She lost teeth and got braces, grew 3 inches in 6 months, developed an obsession with marine biology that required family trips to aquariums and documentaries about ocean ecosystems. They had normal arguments about household chores and screen time and whose turn it was to walk the dog they adopted from a shelter. A mutt named Captain who thought he was a lapdog despite weighing 70 pounds. They navigated blended family complications with more success than failure, learning to communicate about expectations and boundaries in the daily negotiations that any household required. Month 22 found Marcus standing at 5 a.m. staring at a small velvet box. Inside was a ring he'd chosen carefully. Simple band with 3 small stones representing the 3 of them. Affordable but meaningful, symbolic of commitment rather than wealth. He'd been planning this for weeks, saving from his supervisor's salary, wanting to do it right. Today marked 2 years since the elevator. since he'd pressed his mouth to a dying stranger's lips and unknowingly stumbled into his future. He'd asked Elena to meet him at Riverside Tower after his shift ended, at 2 a.m. in that same elevator where everything had changed. The night shift felt interminable, every hour dragging toward the moment that would determine their future officially rather than implicitly. They'd been living as a family for months, sharing space and decisions in Maya's raising. But Marcus wanted the formal commitment, the public declaration, the legal recognition that they were choosing each other permanently. Elena arrived at 2:15, curious and beautiful in casual clothes that suggested she'd come from home rather than office. Marcus led her to the executive elevator, entered the code he'd kept from that first visit to her office, and pressed the button for the 40th floor. Halfway up, he hit the emergency stop. Elena's laugh came warm in the enclosed space. Very romantic, very us. Marcus took her hands, feeling his heart pound against his ribs. 2 years ago, I found you dying in this elevator. I had no idea that saving your life would end up saving mine. He pulled out the ring box, watching her eyes widen with recognition and hope. I'm not rich. I can't offer you the lifestyle you built for yourself. I work maintenance and worry about money more than I'd like. But I can offer you love that's real and steady and unwavering. I can offer you a daughter who adores you and a life that's messy and beautiful and wholly ours. Marcus dropped to one knee in the stopped elevator, opening the box to reveal the ring he'd chosen. Elena Blackwood, will you marry me? Elena was crying before he finished, nodding before she found her voice. Yes, yes, absolutely yes, yes. He slid the ring onto her finger with trembling hands, and she pulled him to his feet, kissing him with laughter and tears mixing together. They held each other in that suspended space between floors, in the elevator that had been the scene of death and resurrection and now proposal, building their future from crisis and choice and daily commitment. When they finally restarted the elevator and reached the ground floor, Elena pulled out her phone and showed him a real estate listing. I've been planning something too. A house, 3 bedrooms, yard, the one we looked at last month. I want to buy it, not as my house or your house, but as our house. Equal names on the deed, equal say in everything. Marcus looked at the photos of the brownstone they'd toured, the one Maya had loved immediately, the one that felt like home before they had even moved in. You were going to propose cohabitation, and I proposed marriage. We've always done things backward. So is that a yes to the house? It's a yes to everything. The house, the marriage, the future, all of it. They drove back to the apartment as dawn broke over the city, ready to tell Maya that their family was becoming official. She woke to find them both in the kitchen, making breakfast, noticed the ring on Elena's finger immediately, and shrieked with 11-year-old excitement that probably woke the neighbors. The wedding happened 4 months later in their new house's garden on a perfect September afternoon. 50 guests, close friends, family, key employees who'd supported Elena through the corporate battle. Maya served as flower girl and maid of honor simultaneously, taking both roles with solemn importance, wearing a dress she'd chosen herself and shoes that sparkled with each step. Rebecca stood as bridesmaid, crying through the ceremony with shameless emotion. Rebecca's sons served as ushers, proud to be part of something that proved love could transcend circumstance. Dan attended in a suit that looked uncomfortable but genuine, gruff acknowledgement that sometimes workplace boundaries were meant to be crossed. Marcus spoke his vows in a voice that only shook slightly. I promise to see you always, to remind you to slow down when you forget, to be your partner in everything, to love you on hard days and easy ones, to build a life with you that's big enough for all our dreams. Elena's hands trembled as she recited hers. I promise to honor what you built with Maya before I arrived, to never try to replace what came before, but to add to it, to support your dreams as fiercely as you support mine, to choose you every day, even when it's difficult, to be worthy of the second chance you gave me at life and love. When they kissed, Maya cheered loudest and Captain barked enthusiastically, and the whole gathering erupted in applause for a couple who'd fought every obstacle to stand together. The reception was simple and perfect. String lights in the garden, food from a local caterer, music from a playlist Marcus had spent weeks curating. They danced to songs about love and commitment and building something lasting, three of them moving together when Maya insisted on joining. "Are you happy, Daddy?" Maya's question came soft against his shoulder. Marcus looked at his wife and daughter, at their house with its garden and mismatched furniture and accumulated evidence of chosen family. "Happier than I knew was possible." 2 weeks after the wedding, they returned to family court for the adoption finalization. Judge Chen presided again, this time celebrating rather than adjudicating. Elena had filed paperwork to legally adopt Maya, wanting to make official what had been true emotionally for months. Maya had chosen to hyphenate her name, Maya Hayes Blackwood, keeping both parents' identities woven together. She signed the documents with careful penmanship, officially becoming daughter to two people who'd chosen to love her unconditionally. The courthouse photographer took family portraits that would hang in their living room beside Maya's drawings and school photos. Three people who made no sense on paper, who'd been told repeatedly that their configuration was wrong or inappropriate or doomed, standing together with legal documentation that proved love could build family as surely as biology. 6 months later found them at Riverside Tower for a company event celebrating the anniversary of Elena's reforms. 200 employees attended from all levels and departments, mingling in ways that would have been impossible before the changes that improved wages and benefits and basic dignity. Marcus stood with Maya watching Elena give a speech about second chances and being seen and recognizing every person's value. She didn't mention him by name, but when her eyes found him in the crowd, everyone noticed the connection between them. Not scandalous anymore, just inspiring. Proof that crossing boundaries could create something stronger than staying safely separated. After the speeches, they took the elevator to the roof observation deck that Marcus had never accessed during his maintenance years. The city sprawled below them, millions of lights representing individual lives and struggles and small victories that accumulated into something resembling civilization. Maya pressed against the glass with the wonder of someone seeing familiar territory from new perspective. "It's like floating in space. Everything looks so tiny from up here." Marcus wrapped his arm around Elena's waist, feeling the comfortable weight of her against his side. "Feels different than it used to, being up here." "Better different." Elena leaned into him, completing the thought they'd been building for 2 years. Maya turned to look at them, expression suddenly serious. "Elena, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetheart." "That night when Daddy saved you, did you know you were going to fall in love with him?" Elena glanced at Marcus, eyes soft with memory and affection. "No, I didn't. But I think maybe deep down I knew my life was about to change. That something important had just happened, even if I didn't understand it yet." Maya nodded with the wisdom of someone who'd learned more about love and loss and rebuilding than most adults managed. "Daddy says you saved each other. Is that true?" Marcus crouched to his daughter's level, this person who had been the reason for everything, whose existence had driven every decision and sacrifice and choice. "Why do you ask?" "Because I think you both saved me too. Before Elena, you were sad sometimes, Daddy. You didn't think I noticed, but I did. And Elena, you were lonely. Now you both laugh more. We all saved each other." Marcus pulled both of them close, his wife and daughter, his family built from crisis and kindness, in the daily decision to keep choosing each other. Some people spent their lives looking for grand gestures and dramatic declarations, but Marcus had learned that love was mostly ordinary moments accumulated until they became extraordinary. They stood together by the windows overlooking the city, where millions of people navigated being human the best they could. Marcus thought about arbitrary fate, how different everything might have been if he'd been cleaning a different floor that night, if he'd called security instead of acting, if Elena hadn't been curious enough to find him again, if either of them had let fear win over hope. But they'd each made small, brave choices that added up to this moment, this life, this love that had seemed impossible from the outside but felt inevitable from within. Somewhere in the city below, Nicole was probably planning her wedding to Derek Cunningham, using the supervised visits with Maya as photo opportunities rather than genuine connection. Raymond Fisher was facing SEC charges and criminal conspiracy indictment, his hostile takeover attempt documented and prosecuted. Patricia Vance was working another custody case, trying to separate another family through legal technicality, But up here in this moment, none of that touched them. Marcus held his family and felt complete in a way that had nothing to do with money or status or meeting expectations. He'd spent 47 years being told he wasn't enough, not educated enough, not wealthy enough, not important enough to matter. And then he'd met someone who saw him clearly and chose him anyway, who taught him that worth wasn't measured in dollars or titles, but in how you treated people when no one was watching. Elena had learned something too, letting go of the fortress she'd built from corporate success and realizing that vulnerability was strength rather than weakness. She'd traded empty achievement for meaningful connection and discovered that building a family required different skills than building a company: patience instead of efficiency, acceptance instead of control, love instead of strategy. Maya had gained two parents who showed up consistently, who fought for her, who demonstrated through actions that she was wanted and valued and worthy of protection. She'd learned that family wasn't always biology, that love could be chosen, that people who started as strangers could become the most important relationships in your life. The city lights blurred slightly as Marcus blinked against unexpected emotion. 2 years ago, he'd been kneeling in an elevator, performing CPR on a dying stranger, terrified and uncertain, just trying to do the right thing. He hadn't known that saving someone else was how you saved yourself, that giving breath to another person could help you finally breathe too. Elena's hand found his, fingers interlacing in the darkness. "What are you thinking?" "That I'm grateful for the coffee cup and the cardiac episode and even the paparazzi, for everything that brought us here." She laughed softly. "Only you would be grateful for almost losing me and definitely losing privacy. Those things led to this, to us. I wouldn't change any of it." Maya squeezed between them, claiming space the way children did, secure in the knowledge that there was always room for her. They held each other as the city hummed below them, three people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something that proved love didn't require perfect circumstances, just courage and honesty and the willingness to keep showing up. Marcus thought about the story they'd tell Maya when she was older, when she wanted to understand how her family came to be. Not a fairy tale about princes and princesses, but something better. A real story about ordinary people who chose to see each other's humanity, who built a family from crisis and kindness, who proved that sometimes the most unlikely combinations created the strongest bonds. That was the story worth telling, worth living, worth fighting for. Not because it was easy or conventional or approved by people who thought they knew better, but because it was true and real and wholly theirs. The observation deck was closing, security guard politely suggesting they head to the elevators. They rode down together 40 floors of descent that felt like coming home instead of leaving, returning to ground level where real life happened in all its messy glory. Marcus held his wife's hand and his daughter's hand, feeling the solid weight of both, the physical evidence that this was real and lasting and worth every battle they'd fought to protect it. They walked out into the September night, into their life, into the future they were building, one ordinary, extraordinary day at a time. And somewhere between the 40th floor and the ground, between crisis and celebration, between who they'd been and who they'd become, Marcus understood that happiness wasn't finding someone who completed you. It was finding people who helped you become more completely yourself. That love wasn't about being saved or saving someone else, but about showing up and being present and choosing each other repeatedly through whatever came next. They drove home through familiar streets, Maya falling asleep in the back seat the way she always did, Elena's hand resting on his knee with comfortable intimacy. The house waited with lights burning in the windows, Captain probably destroying something in their absence. The beautiful chaos of a lived-in home. Marcus pulled into the driveway and looked at the brownstone they'd chosen together, the garden where they'd married, the windows showing Maya's science fair ribbons and family photographs, and all the accumulated evidence of people building a life. This was what winning looked like, not corner offices or stock options or corporate victories, but coming home to people who loved you, who knew your worst qualities and chose you anyway, who showed up consistently through ordinary days and extraordinary crises. He glanced at Elena, found her watching him with the same expression she'd worn that first day in her office when he'd refused her money. like she was trying to understand how someone like him existed, like he'd cracked something open in her carefully constructed world, like she was grateful and terrified and hopeful all at once. What? His question came soft, not wanting to wake Maya. Nothing, just looking at you, remembering. Remembering what? The moment I realized I was falling in love with a janitor, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Marcus leaned across the console and kissed her, gentle and deep, a promise and a prayer and a statement of fact. They'd both fallen, both been caught, both learned that sometimes the person who saved your life was the person you saved right back. The porch light illuminated their path as they carried Maya inside, tucked her into bed still sleeping, stood together in the hallway looking at their daughter and feeling impossibly lucky. Marcus thought about the CPR class taken on a random Tuesday, about showing up to work that night when he could have called in sick, about all the small choices that had led to this exact moment. Life was strange and arbitrary and occasionally devastating, but it was also shot through with grace if you knew how to recognize it. And standing in the hallway of his home, with his wife beside him and his daughter sleeping peacefully, Marcus recognized grace everywhere, in second chances and chosen family, in courage to cross boundaries, in love that refused to acknowledge limitations. That was enough, more than enough, everything.